Welcome, world, to Leadership Lessons. Yes, I've given it a new name, and that is because our Revolution Hive podcast, as you loyal listeners will know, is of course something that we are very dedicated to. However, we've decided to rebrand and rename it Leadership Lessons, and that is because we want it to be even more impactful and even more effective for our listeners to ensure that they can get the most out of it. I am your host, Lewis Howell, and I'm with the main man, Mr. Keshav Bat. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm doing very well. And on that point, we looked at everything that we're doing and what the feedback we got from the online survey that everyone did. Thank you very, very much for filling that out. Everyone who did, we really appreciate it. We had hundreds of responses. We read through all of them, learned a lot about where you guys are from, what you guys are up to, and the kind of things that you want to learn more about, but also the kind of videos and content that you want. And the reason why we've done this adjustment and tweak is life is all about change, and what got you here is not going to get you there. So you have to keep evolving and adjusting, because Facebook, Apple might be at the top of their game today, but you might not be at the top of your game tomorrow. No. And so we are equally thinking about that. And so one of the things that we want to do is simplify. Literally. Complexity is the enemy of execution. So we were talking earlier about simplifying the way that we create content, both for us, but also for you as consumers of that and as part of the community. So I'm going to go straight into that. The outcome, for those of you who are interested, the winner has been announced and has been sent their nice new MacBook Pro. The reaction was...
Very fortunate they are. Their reaction was crazy. I'm not going to lie. Like, we
might have to publish that.
Should we share it? We'll see. You guys decide.
Let us know in the comments below if you want us to. But yeah, so I'm looking at the report here. So the main thing that you might want to hear about, what was the outcome? What are some of the other people like that are watching the videos here? If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook or on SoundCloud, if you're listening to this as the new podcast, most of you guys, we learned that you're between 16 to say 30. So you're young people who are either young professionals, students at college, university, starting a job, a career for the first time. And the kind of things that we learned were that you wanted more of a focus on current affairs. You wanted more motivational videos. Exactly. You love videos where I'm in them, which makes sense because I'm in most of them. Of course. A lot of you commented on the beard, but also on the videos.
The beard has grown. Yeah, it grew in the last year. They saw the progress.
Exactly. But yeah, life is all about change. And so you guys have seen me make videos on my own and turn this now into an organization. And I think, to be honest with you, I want it to be less focused on me as a personal brand or individual, because I really am that dedicated to creating an organization and a movement. And as part of that, this is the growth that we're going on. So some of the other results we got from the survey were that you guys find that you're more motivated to learn overall because of the content that we're creating. You want to see more book summaries. You want to see more courses. You're interested in things like the Hive Leadership Academy, or Hive Library as it was called before, which we'll tell you about in due course. And it's really interesting as well. A lot of you said that you're more able to question and willing to question your beliefs as a result of watching our videos. But anyway, we're going to go straight into the show. So we want to introduce you to episode one of Leadership Lessons.
And it will follow a similar format in some ways to our previous podcast format. So as always, we will start with thanks for the cut. So for those who may be listening for the first time, for those of you that, for example, may be seeing this on YouTube as well, thanks for the cut came from the premise that diamonds, a lot of people associate diamonds with being something of high value. You see diamonds associated with those that have wealth, financial wealth most usually. And essentially, what people don't always remember is that diamonds simply start off as a piece of coal. They're a rock that seemingly has no value, but then they go through extreme pressure. They go through extreme heat. Then they get cut and cut and cut and cut. And they become this beautiful rock that we value so much. But it's that process that they go through to become, because I remember from one of our first podcasts when you made that differentiation between, do you want to be the person or do you want to become the person? And that's it. It's the process of becoming that sometimes we overlook. So for us, we're always trying to, and you could associate this with mindfulness in some ways, but we're always trying to take moments in which we can look at, okay, was this a situation where I had to be cut in order to improve, in order to get better, in order to become more valuable. So thanks for the cut is us being able to reflect on those moments and most importantly share them with you guys, because we think what's so important is you guys realizing that we are also still in a process of development. We are still trying to become. So that's the reason why we share. So do you want to kick off with your thanks for the cut, or do you want me to go first?
I don't know. I'll go first. I'm quite keen to share mine because you haven't even heard this yet. So, my thanks for the
exclusive
DJ Khaled. My thanks for the cut is one of the things that I did back in November. Some people remember is I actually did a character audit, which I asked you to be a part of. So basically, one of the things for those of you listening or watching is we do audits and reviews of our work at, in the workplace. We do reviews and audits of, our finances, our businesses. How many of you have done a character audit where you've looked at who are you becoming? Because a lot of people, who they are is like an accident, right?
Yep.
So they haven't consciously designed who they're becoming. And so I'm really keen to understand, what kind of person am I?
Yep.
Because I think I know who I am, but do I really? So my thanks for the cut is actually related to a continual character audit that I was doing. And I was speaking to one of our team members, and I'm sure you'll know who I'm talking about as soon as I mention this.
I have a feeling I have an inkling.
And he said, he had a conversation with a colleague of his who had a meeting with me. And the first thing he said was, Keshav seeks approval too much. And that he needs to be a lot more confident and assured in, you're already a lot further ahead than you realize. And that you don't need to look across, is it okay for me to move in this direction? Just lead.
Yeah.
Just lead. You don't need to explain, just lead. Just go forward and make that decision. And I think when he gave me that cut, I was like, yeah, I see that. I'm aware of it already. And so most people, and I was grateful to myself in that moment that I didn't get defensive. I immediately embraced it and thought, yeah, okay. And it just fell away in that immediate moment when I read that message. I was like, yeah, I don't need that anymore. Let's just be unapologetic. And I think it was the culmination of a lot of personal development that I've been doing that I'm sure you've seen me go through over the last year of me moving from just me working on my own to now growing an organization, building a team, stepping away from the limelight, being in the kind of behind the scenes, which, is your ego has to get destroyed in that process. So my thanks for the cut is to that individual, but also to myself for embracing that and realizing be unapologetic in leading, and what is understood does not need to be explained, as we talk about so often, because, sometimes, and I know you're going to mention this in your thanks for the cut, I would have, in that scenario, this will make sense to you guys in a second, I would have waited for you to give me permission to say that.
Yeah.
But this time I was like, here you go. This is what it is. And just being assured in that, he'll understand. Look, I don't need to feel bad. I don't need to explain it. And you'll know what place it's coming from.
Exactly.
So yeah, man, that was my thanks for the cut this week.
Love it. And I think that's highly respectable and highly admirable, because sometimes we speak about how hard it is for people to take constructive criticism, but usually that constructive criticism is something to potentially put us down in order for us to rebuild. But that constructive criticism was actually putting you on a pedestal in some ways. It was actually saying to you, you're already at this level, but you just don't necessarily realize it. So it was actually interesting because it was constructive for the fact it was making you realize that you're operating at a level higher than you potentially even understand that you are. And so, so massive. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like that conversation and that piece of feedback actually played maybe a minuscule part in the feedback you gave me, because my thanks for the cut was we are going to be producing some more content that you guys will be seeing in the coming weeks, especially due to the fact that there's been this announcement in the UK of the general election. And, we've got people already making contact with us saying, we want to hear what you guys have to say about this. What are the young people who you work with thinking about this situation? What are their thoughts? What are their voices? And so we said to ourselves, as much as we can go about engaging you guys as our audience, engaging the young people that we work with on the ground in the UK, we said, why not engage other leaders and other authorities and thought leaders within this space of political engagement for young people and engage them in some content. So you'll be seeing some content of that coming out. That said, I contacted a guy who runs a company that you guys will see soon called Shout Out UK. and said to him, look, we'd love to have you in some video content speaking about what you're doing with young people when it comes to them engaging in the political system, because he's created this qualification around politics for young people. So it's really exciting stuff. And I said to him in the email, I remember in the initial email, I said, Matteo, like, I know we've only ever been introduced and we've got another meeting already arranged for in a few weeks' time. But in the interim, short notice, but it'd be really good to get you in some video content to do with, you know, your ideas on political engagement with young people. And I said, it'll be really cool because, you know, we already have had to conclude, these are my words, we've come to conclude due to people telling us to conclude that we are experts in engaging young people online. Ketch's immediate feedback was, no, we're experts in engaging young people online. Just be unapologetic with it. Like, so that's the lesson. It was, don't say you had to conclude that because other people advised you or gave you the space to conclude that. You are experts in online video. Simple as that. Just go for it. And I think in some ways, maybe that was slightly influenced by the same thing of you know, and I know it was Shane's friend who said, you don't need to seek approval. You've done it. It's who you are.
Yeah.
Accept it. Embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think that is so true. But the feedback from me was, and you know, I had certain reasons as to why I'd done it like that. But then on reflection and with the feedback, I was like, yeah, do you know what? Straight up, that's what it is. And even though my reason for doing it was because I wanted to be, you know, in some ways show humility, but there are occasions where it's like, if someone cannot accept that this is who you are, and you're willing to put yourself unapologetically forwards in that way, then actually that says more about them than it does about you. So sometimes you don't need to worry about humility, Lewis. You need to just say, yeah, I'm great. Accept it.
Yeah.
Done. So that was my thanks for the cut, man. And it's big. And I think both of those have a lot of connections, and there are a lot of things that link them. But at the end of the day, this is just to show you guys that even though we look at the things we don't do so well, as people, we're also having to learn about the things we do really well, and then really just play to our strengths. There are a lot of people, you know, within various different industries, those thought leaders around entrepreneurship and things like that, that always say double down on your strengths. And I think this process of us working together in the last year has been just as much about the things we don't do well as it has been about the things we do well, and then looking to double down on those. So.
And that's the process, I think, that we've been through doing the accelerator, speaking to all these people. Like Rapid, our theory of change model, which you guys will hear about, is a very good example. So one of the things that we've been doing is taking it a lot more seriously and looking at what is the theory behind the change that we're trying to create, and how do we measure the impact? So how do we know that us creating videos is helping you to question your beliefs, is equipping students for life beyond school? Like how do we know that? How do we measure that? And what's the process they go through? And we spoke to every expert. We read every book. We went to every session.
It's 4 months of every consultant you can think of.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And the arrival we came to at the end was, we already had it.
Yeah.
And we needed to go through that process.
We had to.
But I think that that's one thing that we've learned is not falling into the trap of the imposter syndrome of, but who am I to be that guy? And I think when you love learning so much, you're very happy to be the student. And I was thinking about this, but you also need to be comfortable with, we're also the master.
Yeah.
And we are also the teacher. And so, you know, when we come to the social reform fair of the week, there is a certain standard that we come to. And we were talking about this earlier when I was saying to you, there are certain meetings that you don't need to take because your time is very, very valuable.
Of course.
And know that you're an expert. So it's okay to say that. And then to move on, because I think if you dwell on it, then it becomes arrogance. It's like, I'm that guy. But it's okay to acknowledge, like, we're experts in video and engaging young people in video. Okay, on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's it.
But I think when you stop there, that's when it becomes and I think that's where maybe the fear is of not wanting to go into that kind of direction. So,
and I think this is one of the topics that I wanted to quickly touch on at some point in today's, in today's lesson, in today's podcast, in today's message. But it is that concept of, and the reason I want to bring it up is because this is going back to one of the previous Revolution Hive community meetups we had, and we had a young man attend who, when we were doing a group coaching session, he spoke about that thing of confidence and not really understanding whether he had something of value to give in terms of being able to start his business. So he was currently, in a job, and he was really just understanding the landscape in which he wanted to enter for business, but he wasn't sure if he actually had something of value. And the more and more people I speak to, the more and more people we work with, I actually think that more of us need to go about reflecting on all of our achievements for our life. Yeah. Looking at what was required to achieve those things. And at some point you will come to realize that whatever it is you plan to do, you're actually 80% of the way to doing it, because you've probably already done something very similar, if not identical, but you just haven't necessarily been positively reinforced for it. Or you have been positively reinforced for it, but you didn't open yourself you didn't open yourself to that enough. Therefore, you didn't necessarily realize I can leverage this. So for example, I'll give you a great example from my other business. I was realizing that I wanted to help these young people to be able to kick off their careers in marketing, but so many of them, no disrespect, but they just weren't good enough. Like that, just being honestly blunt, open, plain, they weren't good enough. And so I was sitting there going like, it's so much time required for me to, because I was actually going through the process of trying to like, if I can find a bit of time, coach each and every one of them to get them ready to then be able to put them forwards for a potential job. And bear in mind, I'm not a recruitment agent. So I'm not getting paid when I put them forward for a job. I'm only getting paid if that same employer turns around and says, we want to put them on your training program. I'm doing all of this as a favor. So this is me just out of the love of my heart doing that. But then I thought, this is just not realistic. Then I said, hold on, you've been delivering this webinar about what is the marketing blueprint for a startup business. That is essentially training for that young person that needs to understand this landscape. Then this other training that you did over here that a company paid you for, next time you do it, record it, put it on this platform. This is now their training modules that they have to go through before you put them forward for anything. Once they've completed that, do you know what I mean? Sometimes we have to look at, oh, I'm actually doing this already really well, which therefore means that it's transferable for other areas of my life. And sometimes we don't always consider that. Do you know what I mean?
That's part of, if you guys go and check out the Jahari's window video, which we'll put a link in the description for you, it's about, finding those hidden areas that you can't see. And sometimes we assume that they're weaknesses, but sometimes actually you're unconsciously competent, to use NLP, in that area. So you overlook like things that you already do really, really well. And sometimes we're so focused on what's the new thing that I can do, but actually just take a step back and look at what I'm already doing right and I can do more of. It doesn't always have to be a new addition. It might just be a slight tweak of what you're already really doing well.
And scaling what you do really well.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I know that was just one of the things I wanted to bring up slightly more ad hoc, but there are a couple of topics we wanted to go through today. And I know that there was one in particular that you were really excited about sharing. And I think, we touched on it briefly at the start of today's podcast, but it was that, very, very big news in the UK recently.
Is it big though?
Do you know why it's big news? Because...
Well, have you been told that it's big news?
No, let me tell you why I say it's big news. It's because, and it's almost not even surprising, but I am actually surprised in some ways. September 2016, Theresa May said explicitly, the video content is available, there will be no general election.
She said it in March as well, as recently as a few weeks ago.
There will be no general election. I will not, absolutely not be doing a surprise election. So I said surprise election.
And that's a very good question. So to go into this topic, what we're going to focus on for the next month is we've been looking a lot at what is Revolution Hive all about? And to put it into one very simple sentence, why do we exist? And that reason is to equip you for life beyond the classroom, to help you learn about the things that you aren't taught in the curriculum in two areas, your self-development and your social development. So being a good individual, but also being a good individual in a community and learning about these topics. So there are 5 key skills that you need to perhaps develop, which we think are self-awareness, social awareness, empathy, having lateral thinking, and being action-orientated, and turning you into this leader, which we call a social reformer. And so taking those big issues and the big topics of our time, like confidence, politics, gender, immigration, we've got a list of 10 from the surveys that we did that you guys want to learn about, that young people all over the world, but specifically in the UK, want to learn about. And looking at that, we decided, okay, well, let's focus our content over the next month as an organization to help you ask that question of, well, why did that happen? And what does that mean for me? Because there are so many of you, I'm sure, watching, like us as young people, asking, well, first of all, do I want to vote in the next election? And why, what's
the impact of me voting?
What is the impact of me voting? And also bringing up this conversation about what is it that this election means in the context of the political climate right now. And one thing that I want to bring up immediately is often we're a little bit apologetic about expressing a political opinion. Because when we say, for example, often when you see a post on Facebook, I see a lot of friends who will apologize and say, and I feel it myself, I don't really want to go on a rant on Facebook and be political. Well, what does it mean to actually be political? Because politics affects every single area of your life. And we got 2 books here that we're both reading. You got Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, and you got Barack Obama, The Audacity of Hope that you're reading. Well, where did this thinking come from of apologizing for being engaged in politics when for a democracy to work, you have to have informed, engaged, active citizens who are driving it? That it's not the leaders who are leading us, but that we as citizens are leading them. And that's for a democracy to really work. That's what you need, is the people telling Barack Obama or Theresa May or Donald Trump that this is the direction that we want to go in. So is the education system, as an education and youth organization, is it doing that? And that's what we are here for, is putting you in touch with the leaders and giving you the leadership lessons to help you understand, well, do I understand what policies Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn, all these different political parties stand for? Or am I voting based on the identity of what it means to be conservative or what it means to be, a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, rather than looking at his policy and his record? And the same with any politician. So what we're going to be doing is in our next episode, bringing on someone from different organizations, Shout Out UK, and other experts to connect you with those people to help you understand the different ideas, because you're not going to get taught that in formal education. And most young people are going to YouTube to learn rather than a library or a lecture. So we thought, why not make it easy for you to access? So
I'd love at this moment just for some young people to share their experiences, because, and I say young because we know that from our surveys, predominantly 16 to 30-year-olds. And if you're, up until that 35-year-old age,
you're still a young person.
Let's accept it. And, if anything, we're giving you a compliment there. But anyway, I'd love for a couple of people to share their experiences, because as much as I know we have other things we'd like to speak about, I don't want to skip over this topic too quickly, because I can get very personal with this topic of politics, because I always, and if anyone that's seen the Cypher will know, I clearly say, I don't think I know a lot about politics, and I'm willing to take that L. But at the same time, as I've gone about actively looking to learn more about politics, like for example, me even bringing up the fact that Theresa May said that in September, a year ago, I would not have known that she said that. Like, I wouldn't have known, because I just wasn't actively engaging. And this is where I'd like you guys your guys' input, and for you guys to share your experiences and to give your opinions. Because for me as a young person, so this is to answer you now, I don't think the education system properly educated me in what politics was and what the political system meant for me. I always assumed that politics was about being in a house in the UK, in a house called Parliament, where these people who were of a certain demographic, who were dressed a certain way, who used certain language and spoke about different policies and different acts and all these things that to me didn't make any sense, because I assumed that it meant that it was a very structural thing, because there was all of this bureaucracy that had to take place. There was a certain level of research and things like that, not realizing that it was actually a case of them making assumptions as well as having conversations with people who were on the ground, or at least that's what they're supposed to do for this democracy to work. But those people just weren't me. And so that's why I didn't understand it.
So there's a couple of questions with this snap general election that's coming up. And if you're outside the UK, this is still relevant for you. But the things that I want to know is, what do you want to learn about? Because we're going to focus on this for the next month and bring in the leaders, experts, different opinions to help you, see what different people are saying in a very engaging way that's not dry or boring, because we know how it can be. But what are you stuck with? What's your political position right now? Are you engaged? Do you care? Are you going to vote? Because I'll be honest, I don't know if I will. Do you think it's worth voting? And just the questions that you have so that we can bring you that content. So let us know, go comment below if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud. Let us know what you want so we can go and get that leadership lesson for you.
And I think it's so interesting because, and this is going to kind of transition into our next topic, but the election, and this again is slightly more biased for those that are listening and watching from the UK, it's taking place in June, which for some people who are, for example, in higher education, that might be the height of exams, and so
might be the last thing you're thinking about.
Yeah, that might be the last thing. So you're there focusing on your revision, but then at the same time, you've got to be thinking about, well, I need to be up to date with what these particular parties' manifestos are and things like that. And so, how is that person going to be able to balance revision with all of this other stuff that's going on? Essentially, they're going to need to be more efficient with their revision. They're going to need to be, more effective with it. Because at the end of the day, they can't sacrifice the last year, 2 years, 3 years worth of work just because there is this snap election coming up. Because at the end of the day, they've still got to succeed. So I want to kind of transition it into this because I know there are a lot of people who have been reaching out to us as well, who have been saying that they feel that's going to be a challenge for them. Even some of our own team members, And so for you, with your experience, because you did your degree, you completed it. What were the things that you did really well when it came to revision, or that you maybe even could have done better and you only learned post?
So to give you guys, let's say, let's go with 3 revision tips to help you be more effective. I think the first thing that I find really effective is, I got this from MK Asante, and he said, you should take 2 sets of notes. So you're reading Barack Obama right now, so you're taking notes in the book, but then you should also take notes on your notes.
Yep.
And that's the process that I've been doing, is every time I read a book now, I'm writing my notes on what I'm learning as I go along.
That's it.
And then when I'm finished, I go back to those notes and write down, okay, what does that information now mean for me? And how am I going to apply that? Because otherwise, they're just notes in a book. You can put this back on your bookshelf and then you're done with it. Whereas when you actually create notes on your notes, it's creating what's known as depth of processing. When information comes in, for you to really retain that information and create new neural pathways in your brain, you need to remix it or remold it in a certain way. So for me, that might be creating a video or creating a spoken word piece where I talk about the effects of alcohol on your hippocampus. And that's creating that depth of processing. So that's the first thing is...
And I want to add to that tip as well, actually, if you don't mind, because what I used to do, and it's funny because obviously I only did 1.5 years of university, but when I was there, people were like, I don't understand, you're top of the class, but you don't seem like, you know what I mean? They were like, you don't seem like, you answer questions in lectures and everything, but you seem like you just take it easy. I don't understand. I'm like, but I studied differently to you guys, because what I would do is after each lecture, I would go and create questions about the lecture to then not only ask myself, and this is going to actually bring me into a tip I wanted to give, so maybe we'll have to make it 4 tips if you had another 2, but is I would then go and get a group of friends who I felt were inspired by the way in which I work, and I would say to myself, right, they are going to ask me these questions and I have to be able to answer it. Then what I would do is, and this transmutes me into the next tip, which is I said to my friends, all right, there's 12 modules we need to revise for this particular exam, because we maybe had 12 lectures. There's 6 of us. You're taking these 2 lectures. You're taking these 2 lectures. You're taking these 2 lectures. And what you need to do is you need to become a master of that content. And you need to create the questions that what you're going to do is, first of all, you're going to create a summary presentation that you take us through. Yeah. So that presentation should last you 10 minutes. You should be able to take us through that whole presentation and educate us, showing us your notes, diagrams, everything, because quite usually lectures are just text and it's just a case of information. I need you to create something that's engaging. If it includes video, if it includes imagery, I need you to create diagrams, flow charts, all of that. That should last you 10, 15 minutes to take us through that content. Then you need to have questions to ask us at the end for us to be able to answer based on what you've just taught us, which you haven't taught us the first time. It's really revision, but still. And so what I did was I utilized the fact that I had a group of 6 friends who we were all going to play football together. You know, we were all going out together when it was like a night out and things like that. So I was like, so we're gonna study together too. Yeah. That's it. If I have to stay at house, stay at house.
If we're willing to go play FIFA together, go out to it, why aren't we willing to study together? And I love that approach because it's crowdsourced learning.
That's how I did it.
You don't have to do everything on your own. You can win together. It's like real collaboration and community. So that second tip there is about delegating your revision and doing it together, because then you have less to focus on, but you can create more from it. The thing that I was going to add from that, and I know that you actually learnt your pitch that way, right? Because you asked the question, is this is a new thing that I've just literally started doing that I've always thought about, is creating a poster where I create a cartoon so I can see that, like, you know, comic book strip of, okay, this is what I need to learn. And then what I actually did was I'd cut each section up and I stuck it in rooms around my house. So when I'm trying to remember, okay, you know, what's next to the lamp? So I would stick, and what you're doing here is, it's called the loci method or loci. You're attaching a memory to a physical object, and it's a very, very powerful way of learning, because if I say to you, can you tell me where I can find spoons in your house? You know specifically where that is, because it's a place in your head in time and space, right? So what you're doing is attaching a piece of information and using NLP, again, unconscious competence, you're attaching it to a location or a marker. So if I'm trying to learn what's Jeremy Corbyn's policy on the rail network in the UK, I might attach it to my lamp. And then what's Theresa May's policy on, you know, immigration?
It's by the oven or something.
Yeah, it's by the oven. So then I'm thinking, okay, when I'm in the exam, if I need to learn, you know, what's the concept of osmosis mean? Oh yeah, that was next to the lamp and that was all about this. That's a really effective way of revising. So that would be the third tip. Definitely. Is attach your information to physical objects. And then that way, every day when you're walking around, you'll see, oh yeah, when I'm getting a fork to eat dinner, you're reminding yourself again. Yeah. And then the next tip that I'm going to go to from there is spatial repetition. So this is a really fancy way of saying repeat that information. There's a thing called the Ebbinghaus curve, which we'll put a little graph here on the screen that you can see. So when you first learn something, it's really fresh in your memory. So after you watch this video, you'll remember it. But the less you access that information, your brain doesn't create that neural pathway. So it doesn't create that groove in your brain. Whereas the more you access it, the longer that information is retained, as you can see on this graph. So what you want to do is continually bring back that information to increase your ability to access that memory. So the other thing that's interesting as well, based on neuroscience, is that the more you access a certain memory, the state that you are in when you access it. So let's say the first time that we met, if I think about that from a negative mood versus a positive mood, it's going to taint that memory. So it's also important the way that you look back at memories and information and putting yourself in a very positive state, which is my final tip when you're accessing that information. So to summarize that really simply is change that information. So I talked about remixing it and depth of processing. And then you spoke about asking questions and also collaborative learning. Then I spoke about attaching information to physical objects. And then that fourth one is making sure that when you access that information, you're doing it on a frequent basis. So don't revise the night before. Everyone knows this, but you can see the science and the kind of information behind it. But also think about the mood that you're in.
Definitely.
Because if you don't enjoy algebra and you're trying to remember, oh, what did Mr. Hill teach me? Oh, I hate that guy. That's the way you're going to feel about that information as well. So be very careful and put yourself in a positive mood by taking positive action. You know, play your favorite, you know, I know you listen to Focus at Will, play your favorite music, eat your favorite cookie every time you're listening to that. Everyone knows this stuff, but not that many people execute on it. And I think that's the difference. So,
and then I want to throw in a curveball.
A bonus tip, yeah?
A bonus tip that almost defeats the object of revision altogether, which is don't revise based on what the word revision should mean. Because to revise means that you're essentially going to repeatedly view something. Do you know what I mean? Which means that you're basically going to have a look at what's already been given to you. My side of the story is go about truly understanding everything that surrounds that, because the way in which in my opinion, and based on our surveys, and, you know, just because we were making some quotes today, tell them the quote about education. It teaches us to regurgitate facts, but not to seek out and correct the cracks. So don't just take, for example, okay, I studied biology at one point. You get taught about the Krebs cycle. So you understand what happens when, for example, glucose moves from here and then it goes to here and then this happens in the mitochondria. And okay, but then understand, what does that mean for the rest of my body? Because sometimes when you start to attach those things, you start to attach what that means on a macro level, that can actually deepen the understanding as well. So my thing is, don't just take the information you've been given and then try to remember and regurgitate that. Truly get to understand it and how it works in practice, because that's how I found I was able to connect it to, and therefore I was able to then explain it in more detail, because I truly understood what was going on with that information. So ask yourself, why am I being given this information? Why is that relevant to me? Okay, you told me that Bandura has this theory around psychology for athletes. Okay. So what does that mean? What does that look like in practice? Okay, where have I seen this happening? Who's portrayed that? Interesting. Okay. So then how was that able to be brought about? And then when you start to ask those questions to yourself, then you become more attached to, okay, now I actually see why I need to learn this. Because then it's that thing of, now you've got a why for why you want to understand it. Do you get what I mean? Because you actually start to understand how it works on a macro level and how it works on a day-to-day level.
And what you're building there is an emotional intrinsic attachment to, why are you learning this?
Yeah.
Where are you trying to get to? And if it's just pointless information to you, then you're not going to engage. It's not going to stick with you. So,
because if someone says eat healthy, and then you're like, okay, and then they're like, yeah, you just need more vitamins and minerals. You're like, okay. But it's not like, if I turn around and say to you, you're going to die. And they're like, what? And you're like, yeah, because you don't have the vitamins and minerals to make your heart continue.
Yeah, the cancer patient who's trying to heal their body through food versus, you know, the 15-year-old me eating Maryland cookies every day. There's a difference, because this person is eating for a reason.
Of course.
This person is just consuming food.
Simple.
I think the best quote on that is, you know, every time you eat, you're either feeding disease or you're fighting it.
Simple.
So you really are what you eat. But we'll come to that. We'll come to the food on another day. So I know we still got to do social reform fail of the week, and then we've got Build the Buzz. So we've got a question.
A great question for Build the Buzz. I feel like
before we get kicked out of YouTube, because we got, I think, 10 minutes?
Limited time. So, let's do social reform fail of the week. So again, for those people who, for example, maybe this may be the first time that you're watching or listening, social reform fail of the week is a segment in which we each identify, or sometimes as a collective, we identify something that has taken place this week, whether it be in our own lives, something that we've experienced, could be something that was in the media, something that's happening in wider society, that we saw either an individual or a group or an organization attempt to do something positive and make a positive change in our society. But unfortunately, there was an inherent flaw in the way in which they went about doing it. And we just have to shine a light on it, because, you know, mistakes are okay when we learn from them, but sometimes we have to put them into the spotlight.
And I think there's a very big dialogue in the personal development community about, here's what 7 successful people do before breakfast. That you need to learn. That's great, but why don't we just learn from all the countless failures that are happening? Because there is a lot to learn. So we're sharing our own. So we're not coming from a place of judgment.
Even at the office, they have F-up nights every couple of months.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? They have.
So tell us the social reform fail of the week.
Okay, so for those of you that have been watching us for a little while, and even for those of you that are new, your first encounter or one of your encounters with Revolution Hive may have been the fact that we put out a social reformer spoken word Cypher back in January, end of January. So for those of you that haven't seen it,
go check that out.
Please go to the Revolution Hive channel and check it out. And we had myself, you, Coyote, and we also had Princess Latifah. And it was fantastic. Got loads of love on Facebook, you know, Twitter as well. We got some interesting reactions on Twitter. I was called the most elite backup dancer in the world. I was like, okay, I'll take that L. Anyway, it really did make an impact, because to this day, I have people who I haven't spoken to in a long time who, when we end up just randomly falling into conversation, so I might just randomly be on WhatsApp and someone messages me, or someone just messages me on Snapchat, and we're having a conversation. How are you? How have things been? Oh, by the way, I saw your Cypher and you guys said this. And it's like, people are watching. People are always watching. Anyway, the Cypher got this attention. And immediately, within days of the Cypher being released, 2 people hit us up and wanted us to perform at their event. We kind of turned down one of them because we just didn't feel it aligned in the best way, which is so important, sticking to your core values, guys. But the other one, we said, yeah, sure, it'd be great. You know, it was a group of young people who had basically, are going to be launching this new event space where they want to be able to hold all forms of creative expression and performing arts. And they want to have this launch event where they're going to have spoken word artists, they're going to have singers, rappers, everything. And as part of that event, they've asked us to come and perform. So in asking us to come and perform, they said this at the end of January, you know, going into February. And the performance is in April. So we're thinking, oh yeah, we've got ages, we're fine, you know, we can work with that. But then they said, okay, we want to do rehearsals before the date of the performance, which is the 22nd of April. So I've said to them, okay, this is no problem, but bear in mind that our team members are from all over the country. So we've got to take that into account. So I'm going to communicate with them with regards to what's feasible and what's possible. Then I'll let you know. We managed to confirm 17th of April. That's when we're coming to perform, to rehearse. And so we confirmed it. Everything was good. I said, are you sure? Because that's a bank holiday Monday. I just want to make sure you guys are open. He said, yep, no problem. We'll be fine. Closer to the time, he said, okay, we're not going to be using the normal event space that day, but we'll be using somewhere else. But that's okay. And then essentially we went from, we're going to go and do the rehearsal on the bank holiday Monday, to me leaving the house and looking at my phone and seeing a message saying the band didn't turn up. Rehearsals are cancelled today. And I'm like, but I've already left my house though. So rehearsals can't be cancelled because I'm not having that. We've known about this for months. Then they said, oh, sorry about that. We'll reschedule. I'm thinking reschedule. We've only got 5 days until the performance. So then there is another set of rehearsals the next day. So I thought maybe they might put us in for that. I couldn't make it anyway. Neither could Kesh. We had a meeting that day. That was on Tuesday. So I waited to see what would happen. They said rehearsals are cancelled again. So then they've messaged on the Tuesday and said, oh, but come for a meeting on Wednesday. Whoa. 24 hours notice. That's not even nearly enough. Do you know what I mean? We're busy people. So I messaged them on the Wednesday and said, no disrespect, but what's the reason for this meeting on Wednesday? Because it's not a rehearsal. And then he said, oh yeah, no, we're going to see if you can rehearse, but that's not confirmed. But it'd just be good for you to see the space, meet the team. I said, no disrespect, but can't we just get on the phone between now and Saturday? And I'll come early on Saturday. No reply. Got a message today, Friday, the day before the event. Here are the rehearsal times for tomorrow. What? But you haven't conversed with me about what time I can come and rehearse before the event, because...
So what was the fail for you?
The fail for me was, one, you knew what our date was months in advance and you managed to allow something to get in the way of that. Things happen, don't get me wrong, but their response should have been a lot more strategic. So for example, when you realized the band didn't turn up on the Monday, could you not have still allowed people to come and rehearse regardless of the fact that the band wasn't going to be there? You said that the reason why you cancelled rehearsals was actually because not all of the band members were there. So it wasn't that none of them were there. You could have, done is better than perfect when perfect isn't done. So sometimes just accept the fact that not all of the band members are there, but we'll make do with what we have. Or you then get on the phone to everyone and say, right, here are 3 options for how we can go about responding to this. What I was expecting was a phone call to say, look, Lewis, okay, we let you down for the rehearsal date. Here are some other potential times you could rehearse. If not, you're saying you can come early on Saturday. What time can you come on Saturday? Because we plan to have everything done by, say, 6 o'clock. Therefore, can you be in for 5? Can you be in for 4? And then speak to me about it. But don't just message and say, this is the time. Because when I saw 12:40, I was like, but that's impossible because I'm in a meeting at that point. So I won't be coming at 12:40.
So I guess the lesson here is making sure you're planned and prepared in advance, being organized, and also making sure that your communication is clear. Perfect. That you're listening one way to what other people can do and then adapting to that. Because obviously when you've got different people, different time schedules, different commitment levels as well, being, flexible enough to being able to engage everyone, but also accommodate as many people as you can given the event, because it's very, very difficult. And so to go to actually the final section of
Build the
Buzz Leadership Lessons episode 1. This is the section where we take your comments, your questions, and give our thoughts, our ideas on, how we think we would approach that. So we've got a question from Carrie, who commented on another video that we put out, the last video. Thanks a lot for your question and your comment. And
thank you, Carrie.
We thought we'd actually just make a video specifically for you. So this is what she asked. It says, how do you respond to rejection? I watched your wonderfully and beautifully made video about what to do post-breakup. Thank you so much. Which has been helping me through a lot of different things. And to keep our question simple, I've received quite a few rejection letters recently. What are your strategies when it comes to self-doubt and success droughts? You know, how do you respond to that? So really quickly, what are some of your final thoughts before we end this episode?
I think when it comes to things like that, being really, really practical, what I tend to do is I tend to try and put myself in an environment around people and in situations where a win is more likely. So when you feel like you're experiencing a success drought, again, everything is perception. But, you know, salespeople talk about this. They say if you're, for example, not making any sales, go and take the sale of someone else, in the sense of you're not looking to take their commission, but it's a case of, you know, if they've got a hot lead, close the deal for them. And that energy that you get from that, you take that elsewhere. So it's a case of I put myself in a situation where if I'm, for example, running a business and I'm struggling to be able to secure meetings with people, I'll go to a hot contact who I know I can get a meeting with. And I'll say, wow, I was able to sort out a meeting. And then you might end up getting one small something from that.
So I guess what you're saying there is being proactive.
That's it.
And the final thing that I would add there is focus on the learning. So adjust your mindset. One of the things that you said in the comment is you feel like it's a success drought. But actually, I think that the seeds are always formed in the winter. So that's when you're planting those ideas, but actually not seeing it. So adjust your mindset is basically what I'm saying into... It's not a success drought, and the doubts are part of the process. Nothing is ever certain. And just knowing, like, focusing on what can you learn from this process. So I hope that helps you. If you guys have got questions, leave your comments below. And this brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks a lot for watching. If you listened or watched on Facebook or YouTube.
Connect with us on all the platforms.
And let us know your thoughts. Like we said, you know, that question about the politics things that we're going to be focusing on over the next month. Let us know in the comments. What are the things that you want to learn about over the next month? And what are the things that you feel you don't know enough about, or the questions that you have about politics or politicians, so that we can get those answers to you. So as always, keep watching. And like I've said in countless videos, I got to end with this. Absorb what's useful, discard what isn't, and add what's uniquely your own. This was episode 1 of Leadership Lessons, and thanks for watching, guys. Peace. Hey guys, how's it going? You're with me, Keshav. No, you start. I can't see you because of the lights, but I could hear you, but I was just like...
Technical difficulties just today, yeah. We didn't start till like 8 something, bro. It's mad.